What's up to all those alone in the zone? Back once again. It's the one that's grinding and outlining. John Eli Lopez on a mission to get you one step closer to being the king or the queen of the pencil. And today we'll be discussing 5 tips to make drawing the human body easy. If you would like to follow along, all you would need right now is a paper, pencil, and eraser. Before you begin, you want to make sure that you have enough room to fit the body in. I can't tell you how many times I've seen students draw the human head or draw the head that they're going to work with and then don't have enough room to fit the body. Okay, so let's get started. So let's move on to tip number 1. Tip number 1, whatever the size of your head, make sure that you keep that as your first point of measuring. And that is not including the hair. The reason I'm not going to include the hair is because it could get confusing if you have someone like, say, for instance, with an afro. You want to make sure you measure the head itself, right? So whatever size you make the head of the person you are drawing, and we are doing average humans now, right? Everybody has their own measurements. Some fall out of it. Some have shorter, longer features. We are just doing average. And the average human falls within 7.5 head lengths. That is the body proportion of the average human. Now, mind you, there are different type of measurements and theories that started from many years ago, from Leonardo da Vinci to Greek sculptures. But I'm going with the 7.5 because that simplifies it to the point of getting you started, right? So as you move on, you could try different measurements like 8 heads, 9 heads, 7, right? The shorter the person, the chubbier, these type of things will come into play, right? So whatever the size of the head that you do, right, you're going to measure 7 heads down, right? So we'll move on, and I'm showing you the entire body, however you draw your body, right? If you want to try to get things into the proper proportion, right? So my second head should end somewhere in the middle of your chest. Somewhere a little under your chest in that cavity, right? And by the third head, that should be a little bit above your waist. As we move down to the fourth head, that lands about a quarter under the crotch area. By the time you get to the fifth head, you should be around the knees, a little bit above the knees. And we're doing average, so it does not have to be perfect, right? But this helps you get your proportions right. So from the waist to the knees is about 2 of the head lengths that you've drawn, right? And from the knees to the ankles, we're up to 7 heads, and that should be average around 2 head lengths. And from the ankles to the bottom of your foot, maybe a little bit above the ankles, you fall into that 7.5 head length, right? Somewhere within that category, and you should be good to go, right? Now, I'm going to move on to tip number 2. The size of your chest, the width of the chest of the person you're doing should fall about 2 head widths. Whatever size your head is, should be 2 head widths to the size of your chest. And this goes for male and female, right? Now we're going to move on to tip number 3. And that should be the size from hip to hip, and that's about 1.5 head length. Not as wide as your chest from shoulder to shoulder, so keep that in mind. Now we're going to move on to tip number 4, which is your arm length. So from the top of your bicep, your shoulder, from like your shoulder area to your elbow, that's about a head and a quarter. So keep that in mind. And now the final tip, 5, which would be the forearm area, and that's from your elbow to the tip of your middle finger. That is about 2 head lengths. Once you keep these proportions in mind, your characters would not look too crazy and unproportioned, right? And as I said, that goes for females. Also, I'm not going to go through the 5 tips again. For the female, the one difference I'm going to show you here is the hip area. Same head measurement, that would be 2 head widths. So usually females at the hip area is a little more wider than the males, right? So keep that in mind as you're doing your female characters also. But all the proportions should fall in the same measurements, right? And remember, we are doing average. So after you start to get your average characters in, or your average body widths in, then you can move on and try other features, right? And we're doing realistic figures. Usually when you get to like comic books and things of that nature, they'll go into 9 and 8.5 head lengths, right? So they exaggerate the features on their characters, right? We're doing realistic measurements, right? So I hope you guys got some value from this video. If you did, headbutt that subscribe button, hit the like, leave a comment. Did I leave anything out? Should I have added something? Is there another video you might like to see? Any feedback is appreciated. So until next time, John Eli Lopez signing out. Y'all be good and be safe.